Okay, picture this. Your country gets offered 13 billion euros, just handed to you. And what do? You say, no thanks? It sounds absolutely nuts, right? Well, that is the very real story of what Ireland did. Today, we're going to unpack one of the weirdest, most fascinating stories in the entire global economy. Ireland's 13 billion euro tax paradox.
It really all comes down to this one single, very strange question. I mean, it feels like a trick question, doesn't it? Why in the world would any country fight tooth and nail to turn down a massive 13 billion euro windfall? Well, Ireland did exactly that. And the answer, well, it pulls back the curtain on a super high-stakes game of taxes, loopholes, and, believe it or not, national identity.
Let's just pause for a second and really look at this number. 13 billion euros. This wasn't some hypothetical lottery jackpot. Nope. This was a very real tax bill that the European Union told the tech giant Apple they had to pay to the Irish government. But instead of jumping at the chance to cash that enormous check, Ireland fought like crazy to reject it.
So here's the lowdown on what turned into an epic battle. It all kicked off back in 2016, when the EU dropped a bombshell. They basically said Ireland gave Apple an illegal sweetheart deal. A deal so sweet that it let Apple pay a tax rate that was, and you might want to sit down for this, as low as 0.005%. Ireland's response was fast and furious. They appealed the decision, not to get the money, but to get the whole ruling thrown out. The fight went on for years, but just in 2024, the EU's highest court laid down the law. The deal was illegal. Apple had to pay.
But still, why? Why would a country that could really use that cash fight so hard to refuse it? You see, the answer isn't just about Apple, and it's not even just about Ireland. To really get it, we need to zoom out and take a look at the shadowy, super complex, and often totally legal world of international corporate taxes.
All right, so let's get you up to speed on the basic rules of this global tax game. It's a game played by the biggest companies in the world, and it's all about one thing: moving profits to places where they'll be taxed the least. And, when you're talking about billions of dollars, even a tiny difference in a tax rate can save a company an absolute fortune. And the grand prize in this game? Finding a tax haven. Now, you've probably heard this term thrown around, but a real tax haven isn't just about low taxes. It's a three-part recipe. First, little to no taxes. Second, really strict financial privacy laws. And third, and this one's crucial, it has to be politically stable. Companies need to know their billions aren't just safe from the tax man, but safe, period. Think of it like a maximum security fortress for profits.
Okay, and this right here is the #1 play in the tax avoidance playbook. It's called transfer pricing. So imagine a huge US tech company. First, they set up a small side company, a subsidiary, over in low-tax Ireland. Then, they sell their most valuable stuff. Not factories or anything, but things like their brand logo, their patents, all that secret code. They sell it to that Irish company. Now, here's where it gets wild. The main US company now has to pay its own Irish subsidiary billions in royalties just to use the brand it already created. And poof, just like that, profits that should have been taxed in the high-tax US are now legally earned in low-tax Ireland. It's a clever accounting trick and a very, very profitable one.
So we've seen the playbook, but now the question is, why did Ireland decide to become a star player in this game? To really get that, you have to look back at their history. It's all deeply rooted in where they came from. You see, for a long, long time, Ireland was one of the poorest countries in Western Europe, just devastated by famine and economic isolation. But then, around the middle of the 20th century, everything started to change. They ditched their old protectionist policies and just threw their doors open to the world, even creating the planet's first modern free trade zone. This basically set the stage for the 1990s, when Ireland's economy just exploded in what everyone started calling the Celtic Tiger era. And the results were, frankly, staggering. I mean, just look at this chart. While the rest of Europe was kind of cruising along at a pretty normal 2.5% growth a year, Ireland was on a rocket ship, averaging 9.5% growth. It was a full-blown economic miracle, and it was almost all fueled by foreign companies just pouring into the country. And at the heart of it all was this number, 12.5%. This super low corporate tax rate became Ireland's global brand, its big promise to the world's largest companies. Hey, come here, set up shop, and you will pay less in taxes. Simple as that. But here's the thing, 12.5% was really just the sticker price. For the most clever companies, Ireland had a playbook that could get that number even lower, using a legendary and now pretty infamous loophole.
It was called the Double Irish, and honestly, it was a masterpiece of tax engineering. So here's the simple version. A U.S. company would set up not one, but two Irish companies. The first one handled all the international sales, but, and this is the genius part, it was legally managed from a true zero tax haven, like Bermuda. So thanks to Irish law at the time, it didn't know any tax in Ireland. The second Irish company held all the valuable IP. The sales company would then pay huge royalties to the IP company, which then sent that money straight to Bermuda, completely untaxed. It was a perfectly legal conveyor belt for making billions of dollars just vanish from any tax authority's radar.
And yup, this brings us right back to Apple. This exact strategy is how they pulled off that jaw-dropping 0.005% tax rate that got the EU's attention in the first place. They weren't just using the Double Irish playbook, they had absolutely mastered it.
So with all this money sloshing through the country, you'd think Ireland must be the richest place on earth, right? Well, this is where the story gets really, really weird.
In 2015, Ireland's government announced something stunning. Its economy, its GDP, had grown by an unbelievable 25% in a single year. Now, to put that into perspective for you, not even the fastest-growing economies on the planet, like China in its prime, could post numbers anywhere near that. So, what on earth was going on? The growth was so fantastical, so completely disconnected from reality, that the Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman gave it the perfect name, leprechaun economics. Because it wasn't real. That giant leap in GDP wasn't because Irish businesses suddenly boomed. It was just Apple moving around 300 billion euros worth of intellectual property onto its books in Ireland. It was a phantom boom, pure paperwork.
And this is the great paradox at the heart of modern Ireland. On paper, the country looks incredibly wealthy. Wealthier than Switzerland. But on the ground, for a lot of regular Irish citizens, it's a struggle. They're dealing with a massive housing crisis. Rent in Dublin is now higher than in Paris or Rome. And despite those amazing statistics, a shocking 7 out of 10 young people say they're thinking about leaving the country. It seems that all that national wealth isn't actually trickling down to improve life for everyone.
Which brings us right back to that big question. Why reject the 13 billion euros? Because for the Irish government, accepting that money would be like admitting their entire modern economic model was built on something illegal. Protecting their reputation as a stable, predictable, low-tax hub for multinational giants, a model that employs thousands and thousands of people, was worth more to them than any one-time payment.
But the rest of the world has started to catch on. The whole era of these super aggressive tax loopholes, an era that Ireland really helped build, well, it's coming to an end. The international community is literally rewriting the rule book. Under huge pressure, Ireland finally shut down the infamous double Irish loophole. And even bigger than that, more than 130 countries, Ireland included, have now agreed to a whole new global standard that's designed to stop this race to the bottom on taxes. And that new rule is pretty simple, a global minimum corporate tax of 15%. The whole point is to make sure that these massive multinational companies pay at least a basic level of tax, no matter where they officially book their profits. And Ireland, seeing which way the wind was blowing, has agreed to sign on. And so Ireland finds itself at a huge crossroads. For decades, its identity and its entire economic success story have been tied to a tax system that is now being taken apart piece by piece. The old playbook is closed for good. So the big question for Ireland's future is, what's its next move?